When you think about how you are feeling now, and the doctor telling you to live your age, which is about 40 physiologically, and then you remember how you were 20 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I can say this, Doc, that I've related this to you many times, and let's go back to the time that before I came to you, when I was in the military and was trying my best to be alive and trying my best to do a job. And I was sent up into Oklahoma, into Altus, Oklahoma, to a base up there to perform a security readiness evaluation test. And we were to sneak in, and of course I was on Darvon and other medications to the point where, gee, I hardly knew what I was doing. And we had a colonel that was the head of the team, and he too had been having some difficulties, such as myself with sciatica, but he told me that he'd found a chiropractor that really took it out of him. And he mentioned the name starting with C, as I could remember. When I'd come home, all I could remember was somebody in Fort Worth, Dallas, or surrounding communities had the name of C. And we scoured the phone books and come up with the name of Craton. And as you remember, I crawled into your office, and literally crawled in, because I had to hold on something to even maintain my equilibrium to get there. Now, at that time, I was a hopeless addict to pain pills, because I had been given these things in quart bottles. In fact, I still have a pint bottle of these things at home, of all strengths. And in addition to that, I had fortified myself with liquor, and became a supplemental drinker, because the pills, the things to remove pain, was no longer working. So I became a hopeless alcohol, or addicted to alcohol, in addition to the addiction to pills. And if you recall, I was forced to take an assignment to Turkey. And the reason I was forced was because I only had 1 year left to get my active time in. And I lay in the back of a paneled station wagon, to be exact. And my wife drove me to the state of embarkation, point of embarkation, and I didn't last a year. And as you recall, I was sent back to the States totally out of it. I could no longer perform my duties. And that's when I really came to you with...
They give you a medical discharge.
Yes, they gave me a medical discharge. And I immediately reported to you, as you recall. And you have been worked on me for, well, you worked on me intensely for over a period of 3 or 4 years, 6 months to be in the starting real intensified, and then periodically over the next 4 or 5 years. And today, I'm in better shape today than I was when you first met me. I no longer drink. I no longer take any pain pills of any kind, not even an aspirin. I take vitamins, as you have pointed out to me, and the necessity of these.
You're walking about 5 miles a day now.
Yeah, and I do religiously 5 miles a day.
And I taught you to be a little careful of what you eat, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah, my meals now are not anything what they used to be.
And that's paid off too, isn't it?
Yes, in all forms. And as I told you before, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be around to even enjoy this.
Now, Herb, you were so appreciative of that. You paid your bill in full. But when I built this house, you came down here and you did all this work on the lighting and some of the plumbing, and you got all my supplies at your wholesale cost, and it never cost me 1 penny for labor.
Well, I think you and I have an appreciation for each other that very few people could ever find. I think we have discovered in the persons that we know each other to be, I think we found something that few people could ever find.
When you was wiring in this house, you had a little stove going down in the basement, and I was so darn cold I couldn't even keep warm the clothes down, and you was a whistling and singing around here, working with your bare hands on the
Well,
fire.
the glow of gratitude, I suppose, is what you would have called that. Because, you know, I was happy being able to repay some of the feeling that I'd had, because you know, after all, if you've been bedfast and you've been in traction and you had a brace removed off your back that they had built for you, remember that thing that they built for me? It came from my neck to down below my buttocks, and there was no way in the world that I would have ever found comfort. And your suggestion to me was that perhaps it would be better if I came to you for a while and do what you said. And I distinctly remember what you told me when you came over to the hospital to see me.
One of the requirements in order to get you well was that you were not to be on your feet, even sitting up, for over...
Well, do you mind if I tell this story?
No, go ahead.
You came to the hospital where they had me in traction, and where I had experienced the afterglow of being addicted to the Darvon, and you sat there on the side of my bed, your words, for about 3 hours waiting for me to wake up, and asked me if I could get out. And I said, well, yeah, I can. So I checked out, and in the bathrobe belonging to the hospital and the pajamas, and you took me to Dallas. And here was this harness thing that I had on, and you relieved me of that, took me in the house and took my bed apart, took the rest of the bed out and left the mattress laying on the floor. And you told me, if you want help and you want continued happiness, then you are not to smoke, you are not to drink, you are not by all means to ever take another pill, and you are to lay on that bed. And if you remember, one of the questions I said to you, or asked you, was, how in the hell do I go to the bathroom? And he said, you can either use a bedpan or you can back your ass up across the stool, but you're not to get on your feet. That was in late August or early September, 1967. Now, I was in that bed during September. Well, to kind of get through the story, I had my Thanksgiving dinner in bed. I enjoyed a wholesome Christmas dinner in bed. I celebrated New Year's, and on my wife's birthday, you called. Now, you'd been calling over these months, but you'd never bothered to come by to see me. You just called. On my wife's birthday, you asked how I felt, and asked me if I had any pain. And my report to you was that I was without pain, and you said, well, let me speak to Hallie. Now, Hallie's my wife. She went and got a chair, came in and said, you said I could get up and walk around a chair one time and lay back down. And the next day, you called me and asked if I had any pain from that walk. And I did not have any pain. That day, you permitted me to walk through my house, through the den, living room, and back down the hall and lay back down. It took me some 6 months through very careful guidance and direction on your part to get me back on my feet and back into the swim of life as a total person. Since that time, I've experienced no restriction of what I've done at all. Now, like all cars that are being run with tremendous numbers of miles, every once in a while it's necessary to stop in for a tune-up. But that's basically all I've done. Today I can build houses. I travel an average of 50,000, 60,000 miles a year on the road. I'm to the point now of retiring the second time, thanks to you, Dr. Craton. I'm building a house that I'm going to retire in, and you and I were talking about a moment ago. I'm looking forward to a real wholesome life. And
You'll get it. You'll get it, too.
And it's because of you.
Well, it's because of the great recuperative power of your body that was able to heal you when I removed the reasons why it wasn't done. See?
Well, I think too, I think we had talked before, for a long time before, but I was not willing to accept it. And I think anyone watching this should understand that this pattern of recuperation cannot be accomplished unless the person experiencing it is willing, absolutely and totally willing, to take all the advice to heart and do exactly as told. Now, when you told me that smoking interfered with the sheaths and the sheathing of the nerves and the nerves themselves and so forth, I thought it was a bunch of bull crap. And it was only when I came to the point of saying, okay, I've hit my bottom, now I'm willing to do whatever the hell it is necessary to do, it was only at that time, doctor, that I started in recovery. It was only at that time that I started recovering.
Right. And you'd never made it if you hadn't come to that decision.
Well, when you told me that I had to stay and crawl around my hands and feet, hands and knees, you cannot imagine how degrading that was to a colonel. Now,
Didn't bother me a bit.
You got to remember that I had directed activities of hundreds of men every day.
What is today's date, Kelly?
Beg pardon?
What is today's date? 23rd, is that right?
23rd.
March 23rd, 2003. Came down here to Granbury, Texas to get the rest of the clerg and actual mineral wells. And got hold of Grandpa's dear friend, Kelly Green, and now we're here with him, and he's just going to, I guess I'm going to ask you a few questions. You're going to tell us what we remember about Grandpa. And maybe get those pictures out to show Mom.
Yeah, all kinds of things that I remember Doc about.
Yeah. You used to golf with him, didn't you?
That's where I met him.
Oh,
On the
is
golf
it?
course,
That's where you
yeah.
golf? Okay.
Met him on the golf course, and I was riding in a cart, and he was walking, and he wanted to know if he could play. He'd already played 9 holes, and he wanted to know if he could play with me. And he said, "Don't worry about me walking and pulling my cart because I can stay up with y'all." And he did, and he was in his 80s then, I think.
Wow.
Or right at it.
Go ahead. Okay.
He told me where he lived and told me to come over to see him, and I went over to Spanish Trails, but I couldn't find where he lived.
Oh, what are you doing, Genevieve?
And but anyhow, after that, we got to be real good friends. He rode on my golf cart with me every day. And I found out a lot about him. Another doctor, a chiropractor that he introduced me to, named Bill Holmes.
Yeah, I knew him. Did you know him?
Oh, yes.
How'd you know Bill?
Well, Doc introduced me. He played golf.
Yeah?
Bill Holmes.
Was he in your group? Because I know I...
He played something with us, yeah.
I know it was 4 guys. I was driving...
Anyhow, Doc Holmes had told me that he had known, all the years he had known Doc, like when he was in Fort Worth, or I think when he was in Oklahoma, that all the area chiropractors, if they had any wanted to know anything or had any questions about how to take care of a patient, they would go to Doc. He said he's the smartest fellow that I have ever known.
This is what Bill Holmes said.
Yeah.
The chiropractor.
And also on the golf course at that time, he was a scratch golfer.
He was what?
A scratch golfer, which
does
is
that
the
mean?
best you can be.
This is Grandpa
No
or
handicap.
Bill? This is Bill Holmes or Grandpa?
No, Doc, not Bill
Oh,
Holmes.
you're kidding me. Grandpa did not have a handicap.
No, he was a scratch. Bill Holmes told me he was a scratch golfer.
Huh.
Ed said don't never play him for money, because if he plays for money, he's going to win.
Grandpa told me once, he said he putted for as much as $800 a hole, I think it was. He was...
Well, he must have had a chance, because he wouldn't. He would have known before he started he was going to beat him.
Yeah, and Grandpa did win the money too. He said, yeah, he was telling Rick about it because Rick golfed. My husband, he golfs.
But Yeah, he was quite a fellow. We got to be quite good friends.
So do you have a chiropractor here now that you trust?
I don't go to
Grandpa's gone?
chiropractors, no. It's not bad. I got a little vibra. My neck gets hurt, and I got a little vibrator I put up there on my neck and turn my head around,
Yeah.
keep the head and pull up on it.
So you know which way it goes anyway.
And I haven't had that too much neck problem, not like I used to.
I know
Used to,
years
yeah, I'd
ago-
wake up at night, with my neck hurting, and just occasionally now, like sometime after golf and sometime after bowling. Bowling seems to kind of bother it, I guess, because you're throwing that 15-pound ball out like that. And I bowl twice a week, play golf 3 times a week.
Yeah. Still staying active.
Clean the house and cook the rest of the time, take care of the dog.
And you don't have a problem with us telling your age on here, do you, for all that?
The what?
So you don't have a problem with us telling your age on here for all of that, do you?
Oh, no.
80
No.
years old.
Yeah, I'm only 80 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golf 3
Uh,
times a week. You go around once or you go around twice when you golf?
Well, I play 18 holes,
18
3
holes.
times a week in 2 bowling leagues.
Wow.
I think that's one thing. And then I've always been outdoor. I worked on the railroad for 40 years. She taught me a whole lot about cayenne pepper and garlic. And
Yeah, it's
all
good to
of
clean
that
out the
stuff.
arteries. And I've used it for myself.
Uh,
I think I've had a heart attack. I do. I know it was a bad thing. And
you know if you have a heart attack. If you had one like I
it
had,
was
you'll know
something.
it.
I know that. I had the angina.
My arms were hurting so bad, I was begging them to cut them off. And
Yeah.
hypo, just a regular shot, didn't do no good. It didn't even ease them.
Yeah.
They had to give me the deadener right in the bloodstream
Yeah.
to get it stopped.
Kelly, can we get those pictures out and put them on the camera? Because Mom would want to see those.
Uh,
I'm pretty sure.
Well, I think she's probably
Has
seen
she
those.
seen them? Okay.
I'm pretty sure she's seen those.
I'm hoping she's seen them.
But we can if you
Yeah,
want.
I'd like to have something. Mom, I know Mom and Grandpa did that one time down there in the office, so.
How's that?
Can you zoom in on that? Or we need to move it forward. Here's one up here, and that's Grandpa. Who is that with Grandpa?
That's May Jones.
May Jones. Is that your old girlfriend you said that died? Or?
No. She's a retired school teacher who her husband, Johnny Jones, had a hip problem that Doc put his hip in.
Yeah.
I introduced him. They're my best friends,
Yeah.
Johnny and May Jones.
Okay.
And this was at a birthday party for my surprise birthday party for my girlfriend Nadine, who passed away with cancer.
Yeah.
This is Doc and May Jones, and here is one of Doc
I think that's Gwen.
and Gwen.
Yeah. I think she had a rib head out of place one time. He told me about it, and he fixed that for her, and she just couldn't be
Yeah,
more tickled, you know.
that's Doc and Johnny
That's the
Jones.
house.
That's May Jones' husband.
Okay. And he's the one that had the hip problem, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
There you are, with Grandpa.
yeah. That's me and Doc.
How many years ago was that now?
Oh, that's been probably 12 years ago.
So how many of his patients did you know, I guess? Not very many.
Me and Johnny Jones, the only ones I know.
Yeah.
He had people that came from out of town. Another guy that had a lot of problems, Richard Hancock.
Do you know Richard Ball over in Mineral Wells?
Who?
Richard Ball. He knew Grandpa. I guess he helped him quite a bit.
No, he had a lot of patients that called that come from out of town, and some of them from quite a ways.
I heard at one time he told me they came from both sides of the coast in Canada to
I
see
don't
him.
know. I know he had several. I don't know exactly where they lived, but he had several that came that I didn't know. The only ones I knew was Johnny and I, and Bud Box. He picks Bud Box up. He
Bud
had
Box.
a,
Is Johnny still around? Is Johnny Jones still around?
oh yeah, yeah, they live right across the street from my girlfriend.
There was a big hole when he left, wasn't there?
Huh?
So there was a pretty big hole down here when he left, wasn't there? When he went back to Enid. I know Gwen wasn't too happy about it.
Oh, no, Gwen never did. She never did get over Doc leaving because they were very, very close.
Yeah. No,
They had happy hour every afternoon.
Yeah, they did that.
His house one day and hers the
Yeah.
next. And then she cooked meals for Doc
Yeah.
time and time again.
Yeah.
And then I remember,
She'd check on him too, I know that.
yeah, one time Doc was, had his hip out.
Yeah, and you fixed it.
Yeah, and he called Doc Holmes
Yeah.
and to come over, and he came over and he told him there wasn't nothing he could do for him in the bed. Doc couldn't move in that bed. Gwen, she went, she's got this ultrasound machine that she
That's-
kept from her husband, who was a doctor who passed away.
Yeah.
And her and Gwen and her daughter, Lisa,
Yeah, that's right. Lisa.
they were over there. They rode that big old machine from her house up that hill and into Doc's.
Yeah.
We tried to get it in the door when I got over there.
Yeah.
And we got it in the door, and Doc says, no, that ain't gonna do it. Said, Kelly can fix it for me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe I can if you tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And so he told me what to do. And I had helped him put guys' hips in before because they would be so big
Big.
that he didn't have
Gotta
the
have the
strength
help,
to push
yeah.
their legs back.
Yeah, and I need help myself sometimes.
And so he told me what to do, and I got up on that bed and I popped that hip back in place, and the minute I did it, he said, you done it, you done it. He crawled right off the bed.
Get up and, oh, thank God
And,
I'm done now. I know,
He just
it
kept
hurts.
on talking about that, about telling me, you know. I get supposedly a doctor over here and he can't do nothing for me and you fix me.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but I couldn't have fixed you if you had to.
I know, that's what I
instructed me.
said. I can do Grandpa's work, but I wouldn't be able to do it, but he hadn't taught it to me, so. And he taught it to me, so. And I'm helping people. And it's always a good feeling. Grandpa told me once, he said, it's the biggest rush you'll ever have, is what Grandpa told me about it. He said, he just loved the experience to be able to help people. And I agree. I really
Well, he
totally
was at it for a
agree.
long time.
Yeah.
I think he got his degree, but I was just a baby.
Yeah, 1925. March
I
11th,
was,
1925.
2 years old.
Were you? Yeah. Of course, that was a chiropractic license. Well, even chiropractors didn't have licenses in the early days. They just
Yeah.
were chiropractors, and I guess B.J. Palmer is the one that kind of popularized it for everybody. You know, he knew him.
Who?
Grandpa knew B.J. Palmer. He did know him personally.
Oh.
And B.J. said he was a good atlas adjuster, I think is what the testimony is on the documentation.
Yeah, I see every once in a while something about that Palmer.
Yeah.
They got one in, I think, in Fort Worth or Dallas. You
Uh,
showed it
Parker,
to me one
Parker
time.
Chiropractic College. He went over there. In fact, it was March the 8th, 1990. He went over to Parker Chiropractic College and he worked on the president and he worked on, he said he worked on everybody in the room. I think there was a torticollis case there. He worked on him. He got the results nobody else could get, and they wanted it in the school. And he said, that's great. He said, but you can't teach what's right on one hand and what's wrong on the other. He said, if you put my work in the school, I'm going to have to weed the chaff and get rid of all the junk. And they wouldn't do it.
I tell you another fascinating story about him that I'll never forget. I had a grandson who is about 18 years old. He wakes up one morning and walks in the house and he said, something wrong with me, and his mouth was all pulled over like this, you know. And He said, I think it's a tooth. I said, no, and I need to go to a dentist. I said, that ain't no tooth causing that. And I said, something wrong, but I don't know what it is. I said, we'll go over and let Doc see what it is. And I called Doc and told him. He said, yeah, bring him on over here. And we went over to Doc's. We walked in the front door. He's sitting over at the table.
Mm-hmm.
As we walked in the door, he says he's got Bell's palsy.
Okay.
And so he come over and had him sit down. He worked on his neck there a little bit. And he said, now it'll take 7 days. It'll take 7 days for your mouth to go back to its normal position.
Mm-hmm.
And the 7th day, his mouth went back.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
Huh.
It went back normal, and then he told Brent after that, he said, boy, you're lucky your grandpa brought you over here. He said, if you don't fix that in so many days after it first hit you, you're that away for the rest of your life.
Oh, really? Really?
And I said, well, I'd never heard of it. And he said, well, it's the guy that diagnosed it and figured out the way to fix it was a Dr. Bell.
Mm-hmm.
So they called it Bell's palsy.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I have seen people, in fact, one lady that I knew had it and just went to a medical doctor, and her mouth's still that way.
Yeah. So he was dealing with the neck.
I don't remember what he did, but he was up in the neck.
Probably the position of the head.
And,
That's what it is.
He told him exactly 7 days. That'll be, your mouth will be back normal in 7 days. 7 days right on the money.
On the money. Huh. Well, that's
His neck-
interesting.
His mouth was back.
So I always tell everybody, I say, I have no idea what I can do. I don't know. I'm dealing with causes, you know. I don't know what I can accomplish. I don't know what I can be. I have
And
no
he is,
idea. That's interesting. I'm glad
and
to hear
this
that.
boy was a great, big, tall, built up, and really, really handsome boy. I
He
mean,
didn't want to have that
like
his
a
whole
movie
life.
star.
Yeah.
That would have been a shame if his
Yeah.
mouth had been down like
And he
that.
never had any more problems.
And he wasn't but 20, he was 20 years old.
And so he never had any more problems
Oh,
after
no,
that. Oh,
no,
cool.
never.
Cool. Well, that's a nice story. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kelly.